Hey guys, it's me, and you are now listening to the Renegade Podcast. This guest I'm going to have, very special guest. His name is Danny Marks of the BluzFm/JazzFM. He is a sort of indie legend in the jazz scene here in Canada in terms of just radio and showcasing new stuff. He has his own show, which is pre-recorded. Had a bit of a conversation last week, but, audio wasn't really working. So we're going to try it this time at home instead of school, because there's background noise and all that stuff. So now, let's just get the ball rolling on this one. And, that's the thing. It's like, that's the thing. And that's the thing. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fascinating, sort of, to say the least. And it's going to be very fun. Very, very fun. And I'm very excited for this conversation to happen and, a different perspective, on certain things. And I know, the last week or so has been, chaotic. There's a workload and all that stuff. But I'm excited. I think everyone here is going to be very excited of this interview coming up. So it's going to be, very interesting. And the thing I learned the last couple months has been sort of how can I say this? It's been don't be afraid to ask about certain things. I mean, I think we're all sort of, guilty of it. I think, we view some people that we like or listen or watch or whatever, on whatever platform. We sort of view them as above us, but they're really not. I mean, quite a few of my requests have been hey, are you available? And they said yes, we arranged it, we got it done, I got it uploaded, and now look where I am now. I mean, I think after school it's going to be very interesting. I mean, after I graduate and all that stuff, it's going to be very, it's going to be fun. So I'm going to go full throttle with this. I don't think it's going to be, nothing's going to hold me back, And I also want to branch out. I want to talk to all types of people. That's why this thing was made in the first place, right? I mean, I talked to a rapper, talked to a YouTuber, then I talked to a video essayist, and now he has arrived, the one, the only, Danny Marks. And here we go. Here we go.
All right. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me and you can see me.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Now, there's a little bit of an echo on your end, but mostly, here's the deal.
Yeah.
Today, Yusuf, I'm at the radio station.
Yes.
I forgot that we were going to do this today.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is,
yeah,
we can still do it.
Yeah. 1,000%.
There's just a little bit of a delay between my voice and yours.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to wait. I'm going to let you say what you say.
Yeah.
Let me say what I say.
Yeah.
And as long as you're recording it, we're good.
Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah, I sort of want to bring up, because I asked you this as well last time we spoke, and it was about kind of, how can I say this? It was about what was the danger or the present threat to Canadian radio and media content in general. And you gave a great answer, but I kind of want to dive into that more, because I feel like, I feel like that should be talked about more in light of the election and how these things go, right?
I do, Yusuf, and yet, you know, I don't feel that it's really that great for me to get too political.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember what the answer might have been last time.
Yeah.
Because I just riff in the moment.
Yeah.
It might have been that the danger to Canadian media is the same as it is everywhere.
Yeah.
And that is that the little guys are all being bought up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned sort of there are certain sort of things or content that, you know, we couldn't really talk about. Can you sort of dive into that more? Because I find that pretty interesting point you brought up.
Now, let me ask a quick question, which is everything from the original interview, nothing could be used because it didn't come through, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll start again. You ask the question, ask me what you want to talk about, and
Yeah.
I'll go at it for a few minutes.
Okay. So the original question I was trying to say is that you mentioned that sort of, you know, there's sort of been like a sort of a decentralization of maybe a centralization radio in general, right? Because you have these radio stations that have been open forever and they're closing down because they're not making enough money, they're not making enough profit, right? And I sort of kind of want to dive into that and see what are the reasons for that type of thing.
Okay. Well, radio's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
When my dad was a kid in the 1920s, he built himself a little crystal radio, and he used to be able to tune in late at night because the airwaves would get quiet.
Yeah.
It was a new thing, and he could tune in and he could hear the Cotton Club in New York.
Yeah.
And he could also hear the Grand Ole Opry coming out of Nashville, Tennessee. So
Yes.
he listened to the radio all the time, and radio was a huge thing in those years. The families would gather around a big old radio, the tubes would glow, and out would come sound just magically. Radio was the great media in those years.
Yeah.
And as we grew up and we were kids, top 10 radio was huge.
Yeah.
There were charts, and in the charts, the music and the diversity that was there in one chart of a typical station in Toronto, for instance, 1050 Chum,
Yeah.
you could hear everything from Lawrence Welk to Otis Redding in the same chart.
Yeah.
When the Beatles came along, and of course Elvis, all the rock and roll and the softer sounds, the
Yeah.
easy listening sounds,
Yeah.
the soul music sounds, it was all in one chart.
Yeah.
And each station was sort of independent from each other. There were chains, of course, but what's happened in the most recent years is the little guys have sort of been bought up by big chains.
Yeah.
And most of media is owned by a very few large conglomerates.
Yeah.
And of course, there's other kinds of radio like podcasting, and that's a different thing. But if we're speaking strictly of old school radio,
Yeah.
it's shrunk down and it's become very condensed.
Yeah.
Now, our radio station, JazzFM91, we're different because we have 4 or 5 minutes at the most per hour of ads. And the rest of our income comes from folks who sponsor us and
Yeah.
make pledge and donations and keep
Yeah.
us on the air. So we're in an unusual and a wonderful place here at JazzFM91. I feel a bit sad for radio, and I guess that with the satellite coming along, everything, you know, it's almost like the way, excuse this, but it's like how a drug dealer would do.
Yeah.
First sample for free,
Yeah.
and then after that, the next thing you know, you're paying for it. And
Yeah.
once you're hooked, it's more and more expensive all the time.
Yeah.
And in the old radio, you would just turn it on and you'd have to suffer through some commercials.
Yeah.
Well, what happened is AM is all gone pretty well to talk.
Yeah.
FM has so many commercials.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different beast than it once was.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up because even when I was younger, there's still some stations that had both, right? They had the music, but they also had the conversational dialogue with the host or with the guest or whatever. Now it's to get the conversation, you need to go to an AM station and you have to flip back to an FM station you want to listen to music. What do you think caused that split in the first place, and why?
Well, I think that what causes most things in our society is people say greed.
Yeah.
Some people say it's money.
Yeah.
That's always the little 3-word sentence. Follow the money. So
yeah.
Where the money went, that's where it goes. Now, I do remember as a kid, the first kind of phone-in radio shows that they ever had. There was a chap named Larry Solway. Yeah. His program was called Speak Your Mind.
Yes.
And this is before Howard Stern, of course, many decades before. You'd call into Larry Solway and you'd have a problem, and they'd have a thing of a 6-second delay so that there'd be somebody sitting in the room, and if you said something vulgar or if you said a bad word or a word that wasn't allowed, and there are different words are not allowed today. But back then, of course, it would be any kind of a 4-letter word, and they'd be able to bleep it and catch it in time before it hit the air. That's just a side note. But I think that's what happened, Yusuf, is that money came along, and money always motivates. Money is what got radio started, and then that's what's changed the climate.
So what do you think the industry or the people within the institution should be sort of doing to sort of ensure the survival of radio amidst the threats of potential defundment from certain parties politically, or just people just tuning out? Like, what do you think they should be doing, in your opinion? Why?
Well, I'm not, obviously I'm not really an expert on it, except one thing that I have become an expert at is because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Is how to make good radio and what constitutes the intimate radio experience between a host and the audience.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I learned was the beauty of radio. One of the beauties is it's like a book versus a movie.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking at an image.
Yeah.
You're hearing a voice. You're using your imagination.
Yeah.
You're meeting the on-air person halfway by listening to what they're saying, and it's the tone of their voice and the way they say things and the words they choose. That has a great deal to do with it. The other thing is that it's an intimate medium. You're not speaking to a group. You're speaking one-on-one.
Yeah.
So what radio needs to remember is what it has that's very special, that's an intimate connection. And especially if we can keep our freedom to play the music that we want and to conduct ourselves in a proper way, well, we'll be able to keep on. We'll be able to fulfill a need. We have to make sure we're fulfilling the need that isn't being fulfilled in other places.
Yeah.
Podcasts are great, and but radio is special. It's magic.
Yeah, for sure. So do you think? So because people bring up, people's attention spans, going down due to iPhone and devices and internet in general. Do you think that has also caused a bit of the decline in interest in radio, in a way?
I think you hit on something really smart and really true, and I guess the word is prescient. I'm not sure if I'm using that word right.
Yeah.
We'll look it up in the dictionary. But absolutely, because, I like riding in the TTC. I like going for walks.
Yeah.
I like being away from the computer, because as long as there's a computer there, you can keep checking it to see if any last little thing has come in.
Yeah.
And as long as you're carrying a phone with you, you're tempted to look at it. And when I'm on the streetcar going across town, I see people are looking at their phones. If they're alone, they're looking at it. And sometimes you might look over their shoulder and see they're either talking to somebody with their voice in their headphones, they're texting somebody, they're maybe reading an article, they're looking at a recipe, they're looking at their social media, or they're playing some kind of a silly little game. And the thing is that you're not really using your imagination or your powers of observation.
Yeah.
And what I feel is that you're being robbed of the moment.
Yes.
The moment is the important thing. It's beautiful to look back and see where we were.
Yeah.
It's important to look forward and see where you want to go.
Yeah.
But the present is a gift.
Yeah. That's a beautiful answer, because I look back when I was younger, and there's things that like I was sort of resentful of, because like I see other people that I knew, they was going out and they had phones, and I didn't get my phone till like high school or middle school or something like that, right? And all the people I knew, they've been have a device for years, but I felt like the way that some of them interacted and talked and sort of, the output of what they do, I felt like there was a difference,
I'll tell you something I saw yesterday on
Yeah.
the street, and that was a mother had her baby in the carriage.
Yeah.
She's wheeling the baby out of a store.
Yep.
And you could see that the baby must have been smiling at the mother and
Yeah.
looking up at her mom. And the mom smiled at the baby.
Yes.
And there was this one instant, and then very quickly after, the mother took out her phone and started looking at the phone. And I'm thinking, there's a tiny baby. What happened? Why is mom not looking at me now?
That's crazy.
Why? It was so sad.
Yeah.
That connection was broken.
Yeah.
And probably not until they get home or to their destination are
Yeah.
they going to make eye contact again, and the mother will pick the baby up, and then they're in the moment again.
Yeah. That's the thing that I always try to sort of keep myself in check, is because whenever, like, think about, like, because have you heard of Reddit?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been on Reddit?
No. As
Okay.
a matter of fact, I'm one of the few people that I do have a cell phone.
Yeah.
I use it for one application basically only, apart from the flashlight. I like the flashlight. And the other part is that my girlfriend and I will talk by WhatsApp.
Oh.
My
Yeah.
cordless phone isn't very good at home. And,
Yeah.
And I don't mind WhatsApp, but she and I connect that way. But otherwise, I am staunchly refusing to use the cell phone. So,
Yeah.
no, but I've seen Reddit, and I know that there's all kinds of stuff out there that I'm just not willing to embrace and hoping to do without. I mean, it's not that I don't want to step into the modern moment. Where I am right now is I'm assembling a radio, and I'm doing it on a computer, of course, just like everybody else would be.
Yeah.
And I'm really good at that, and I'm good at being able to make music with the computer to some degree.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get that good at it, because there are other people that are great at it, and
Yeah.
I want to be part of a team.
Yeah. Yeah, so the reason why I mentioned Reddit is because
Yeah.
those type of sort of kind of forums of information, one of the bigger issues with that is that whenever something that's breaking news, because think about, like, back in the day, right? You only had like 3 modes of finding out information. It was TV, radio, newspaper, press, right? And those people at that time, right? And they may have their own agendas, yada, 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 but there was a process, right? It wasn't 24/7. It wasn't 365 days a year. It wasn't constant sort of negativity, controversy, rage bait, trying to get you upset, trying to get you to click on their website, and yada, yada, yada. Now, whenever something big comes up, there's always, you look at the comments, and they're not even talking about the event. They're cracking jokes, they're going after each other, they're mentioning other things, and it kind of makes me go crazy, because like that thing just happened, right? And you guys' first resort is to make jokes about it. Like, look, I love making jokes, but like, there's certain times, like, it's time to get serious.
Humor has become very mean, and
Yeah.
everything has become very polarized.
Yeah.
It's not always a choice between country and Western, or
Yeah.
rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
And that's, I call that, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Because sports are good, sports are fine.
Yeah.
It's like sports mentality, which is a reflection of war mentality.
Yes.
And that's where we're forced upon to decide between the lesser of two evils. And it turns out that we are rarely offered the greater of two goods.
Yeah.
And every I saw somebody reading a newspaper on the subway yesterday.
Yeah.
I wanted to stop the world and let me off. You never see that anymore.
Yeah.
And newspapers now are more like pamphlets.
Yes.
But the problem is that all news seems to be bought and paid for. That seems to be where everything is going.
Yeah.
And so you can't rely on. And the other thing is, speaking of Reddit, look at Facebook. There is no actual mainstream news allowed on Facebook. So if anything is a legitimate news item,
Yeah.
it's not allowed on there. But people are still posting stuff that pretends to be legitimate news items.
Yeah.
And they're going, look at this. This is a true story. This is what this, I want to say Mark Carney stands for this, or Polivier stands for that. And I mean, it's brutal.
It's
a brutal thing. And who knows whether we want to side with, well, China is backing this side, USA is backing that side, and whatever happened to Canada. And here we are. This is where we are, Canada. I know I said I didn't want to get too political, but that's just a matter of pride.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's this. Have you heard of Denzel Washington?
Yes, I saw him on an old clip. He was sitting there with a TV host, might have been David Letterman. It was a long old rerun.
Yeah.
And Don Rickles, and the three of them were sitting there.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Yes, so Denzel Washington, yeah.
Yeah. So he said something very, very poignant. It was like 2016. And he was promoting Fences. I think that movie, right? And he had an interview, I think, on the red carpet of that sort of premiere. They premiered somewhere in some city. And he said something so interesting. He said that news now isn't about informing the people or helping people out, sort of fill in all the gaps. Now it's a gotcha type of thing, right? They don't care who they hurt. They don't care who they affect negatively. It's just say it, sell it, right? And this other interview that he did with BBC, where he talks about how the Rust Belt, the industrial Rust Belt in the U.S., and all those cities and all those people and all those townships have all been suffering for a long time, right? And out of that sort of desperation, right, they elect someone who they think cares about them. But when you look into that person just one little bit, you know that person doesn't care about anyone but himself. But that desperation makes people do crazy things. And he said every day is something new. Now every hour is something new, right? I mean, I look at the Canada versus USA Four Nations matchups, right? And I know that it's its own conversation at that point. But seeing the difference, how people reacted when Canada lost versus when Canada won was so stark. You might as well be looking at two completely different things, even though both of those games took place in like a 6-7 day span. But that's just the beast of the internet, I guess.
Well, with regards to that, I think it was very sad, because that's when people started booing the national anthem.
Yeah.
And I saw that there was a lot of encouragement for people not to feel patriotic in Canada.
Yeah.
And to feel that that we should feel that our national shame for the way we've done things.
Yeah.
And there was a certain part of the population, the leadership, that was telling us we should be patriotic.
Yeah.
And then recently, now since the Americans have changed their posturing, their politics, now suddenly we're supposed to be patriotic and elbows up. I think elbows up is a sad thing. Someone used the term confirmation bias the other day, and I went, that's what we're looking for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called cognitive dissonance, where, you don't want to hear something because it makes all of your belief system fall, like a deck of cards. I believe in cognitive resonance. I want to find the common bond between people, and I think that's, Yusuf, if we are doing that, the common bond between people that seem to be different, I think that's going to be a real shock to some folks. Wow, you mean to say that this person from way over on that side and that person on that side, they were brought together by something? What is that magical something that brought these people together? Because we're all being told to be different from each other based on anything we can think of.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to race. I think you used the term race baiting and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's silly. When you meet somebody from another nation
Yeah.
that we're supposed to be enemies with, and it
Yeah.
turns out they're the sweetest, loveliest person you could possibly meet.
Yeah.
You go, well, we're supposed to be enemies. Who's teaching us this? That we should be fighting with you.
I think that sort of kind of ties back into this sort of kind of ancient human mentality of like, kind of the sort of dog eat dog world type of thing. That's a saying that people have been saying, and I used to kind of agree with it. Now I'm like, nah, that we can't operate that way, because fundamentally we're all the same. When you think about it, right? Sure, our likes, our hobbies, our looks, sexuality, all that stuff can be drastically different, but we all want the same thing, right? We all want to be free. We all want to, be under a roof, sleep under a roof, get food, be hydrated, hopefully elect people who will benefit us in short and long term. We all want the same thing, but it feels like anytime something big happens, we keep fighting within ourselves instead of trying to actually push forward a mandate that benefits everybody in a way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also that it seems that the ones that are similar are the ones that seem to fight the most.
Yeah.
The sibling rivalry, and it seems that the deepest, horriblest wars of all time are between neighbors, and not only neighbors, but brothers.
Yeah.
And so that goes back, as much as, we want to blame the males of the world for it.
Yeah.
The men are sort of the ones that are doing a lot of the fighting.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it's the mothers who promote this kind of thing in babies, and so both mothers and fathers and daughters and sons, and we all have to realize, as you say, we all want the same things for ourselves and the people we care most about. And so, I don't know whether you're very close to your brother and sister.
I'm very close. That's the thing. See, that's the thing that's the bond that me and my brother have, like, because he's older than me. He's a year older than me, right? And the bond that we have is unbreakable, because, like, fundamentally, he is my best friend, right? He's the person I talk to the most. I'm not afraid to admit that. I feel like people who say that have some sort of shame, which is, like, silly. Like, the family should be the ones you talk to the most.
Yep.
Because they know you the most. They know your tendencies, your strengths, your weaknesses, everything in between. Like, but you shouldn't be giving all that away to some person that might understand where you're coming from, but they're not in your shoes. Your family are kind of in your shoes in a way, in that type of sense.
Well, your parents,
I'm
sure, taught you well to love each other and not to compete with each other over every little thing. And my parents, they taught us very well, and they told us to love each other, but they also made it a little bit of a contest between, my sister and I, for instance. If I came to my mom and said, look what I did, she'd want to even it out a little bit. And so that evening out became kind of a rivalry.
Yeah.
Well, how come your brother is doing so well with this and you're floundering, or the other way around, or whatever? And our family, we weren't so... We had beautiful parents. You know what? My father was born in 1915.
Wow.
He lived to 95 years old, so he's been dead, I guess, maybe for 10 years. And Yusuf, I hear from him all the time. Sometimes in a dream. Sometimes when I'm awake. And other times when, by accident, I'll meet somebody purely by coincidence. We'll have a talk about some soul-searching subject. This happened to me the other day. The man said, Danny, I hear what you're saying about having, issues with arrhythmia in your heart. And I said, yeah, my heartbeat is a little odd. He said, my dad had the same problem. And he said to me, he's from Mexico. He said, Danny, I had my heart replaced by a surgeon from France 10 years ago, and it's still beating. He says, you don't know much about me, he told me, but I used to work in the business making alcohol in the liquor business. He said, I said, really, Michael, my neighbor Michael? I said, that's interesting because you know what? My dad also worked in that business. He said, oh, I said, yep. I said, he worked at L.J. McGinnis.
Wow.
Michael, my neighbor, said, so did I. I said, maybe you knew my father. And he started to tell me all about my dad and how they had hung out years and years ago and the things they used to do and what my father taught him. So here's this slightly older than me neighbor teaching me about things to do with my heart, the same things that my father had. And it turned out, as we were standing across the street, by the way, from the place where my father grew up in the 1920s, and this neighbor of mine, completely out of the blue, I knew your dad. He was a great man to me. He taught me a lot. And that I felt like Dad somehow is reaching out to me through this series of coincidences and my beautiful neighbor.
You know, that's the thing about, you know, it's a small world. We sometimes just forget how, you know, how certain stories get passed on without you even realizing. I'll tell you a story. This is a funny story, actually. It's just a funny story. I was just, you know, I was in class, right? This was when I was younger, and I think I was on my phone, right? And I used to be friends with this guy named Donovan, and you know, we was really, really close, like grade 3, 4, 5, and in grade 5, right, around the Christmas break, he went to Florida, right? Okay, comes back. And he just started acting erratic for no real reason. And that whole time afterwards, it was just like every day it was something new. Every day he was getting sent to detention, to the office. He was going home early. He wasn't coming in. And then a little while after that, right? I think this was when TikTok started becoming popular, right? And I said, you know, let me just download the app, right? Whatever. I searched up Rizdale, right? I'm like, okay, well, let's see if there's like a video on it. And there was, by the very same person, right? And I reached out to him. We had a conversation, and you know, and it's just like, you know, certain cues start coming in. I started realizing why he was having those issues, right? And because you don't really understand a person until you actually speak to them like face to face, right? That's why I feel like, you know, the online conversation, there's a bit of sort of something missing in translation with that.
Well, I can see your face. I don't know if you can see mine, whether my camera's on, but I've been able to look at you. I'm not sure whether the camera's on here or not. It says it's on. Maybe it's been blocked up here.
Maybe.
Well, I can see you. Now, here's what I have to say is that it's 2:30. Why don't we see what you can do with what we have now, or find a way to wrap it up?
Yeah. I was going to wrap it up, actually.
Yeah, beautiful. Because, you know, I think what we did the first time we talked, it was a whole different kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And I bet every time we do, it would be a different conversation.
Exactly. We operate similarly, man. We think similarly on certain topics. You know, I'm passionate about radio. You're passionate. You've been in the business for so long, longer than I've been alive. So there's a different perspective with that. I really appreciate you, you know, coming on here and because when I sent out the link, I didn't think you would like click on it and just reply back, right? I really appreciate you doing that.
Well, you know, I think the reason is because we had such a great conversation the first time.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I also was, I said, I don't even know if this guy, I told him, actually, I said, I don't even know if this guy Yusuf is, like, he just sent me a link and he said, okay, I'll see you then. And I said, yeah, see you then. And there wasn't any nonsense, any fancy dancing, any prep, any of that bull.
Yeah.
We were just going to have a real, natural conversation.
Yes.
And I admired that. And then I felt sorry because here we had done this beautiful hour together and it got lost. And, you know, these things happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying this time, though, it's just a half an hour. I'll get back to my station stuff. But also, you know, if you want to do it again another time and add to this or separately, I'm good with that.
Yeah. you know what? Maybe I'll be working beside you someday. You never know, right?
You never know.
Never know. I really appreciate you coming by. I hope you have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you, Saf. I'll turn back to my radio program. I had to come in today because I left something behind at work yesterday.
Yeah.
And I thought I'm going to come and I'm going to get a head start on next week's program.
Yeah.
And so it's good that I'm here, and it's great that I saw your message.
Yeah.
And we got this done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, brother. Let me know how it works out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. And you just listened to the episode of the Renegade Podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed that episode. And hope to see you guys next time. Peace out.